Okay, got it.
Good. So, yeah, how have things been then in recent weeks?
They've been pretty interesting, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I um I discovered you through an interview I was watching with this woman who was speaking to Angelo DeLullo,
Mm-hmm.
and she mentioned you, and she mentioned that she watched a video where this woman had uh, woken up or had self-realization. And I don't always check out people's names, but for some reason I felt drawn to it. And
Mm-hmm.
I watched, like many people, I watched the interview on Conscious TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to watch the videos. I think it was the second video I watched. It was one of the two women that had self-realization happen during the conversation.
Yes.
Okay, so when she experienced it,
Mm-hmm.
I had an image appear, and in that moment, I saw so clearly that there was no such thing as separation because there was nothing to be separated from.
Wonderful.
Okay. I don't know what the image was about. That's kind of a curiosity, but
Mm.
that's the mind. Anyway, um, so I started to watch the videos. I probably watched every one you've put up. Like,
Okay.
I don't think I've missed one. And what started to happen was I would listen to the videos, I would watch the videos, and memories would be triggered
Mm-hmm.
of things that I hadn't thought of in years.
Mm-hmm.
And in the moment that they came into memory or into awareness, I would see them and I would see a depth to them that I hadn't seen when they occurred or when I had recalled them. And then they would disappear. Now, I had tons of them. I cannot tell you even one.
Wow.
Not even one of them do I recall. It's like they happened, they disappeared, and that was it. Then at a certain point, I started to feel like I was being prepared for something.
Mm-hmm.
In the process of listening to these conversations, which I found very moving and very um, informative in the way that they answered questions that I had. Some of them I was aware of, and some of them that I wasn't. So
Mm-hmm.
it deepened. Um, it deepened. I don't know even know how I would say that. I saw things more deeply. So even if I read something that I had read before,
Mm-hmm.
um, I would hear it infinitely more deeply than before. Okay, I
Wonderful.
would hear it in an entirely not an entirely different light, but like there was a piece of it I hadn't seen before. Um, and then the days went on, and at a certain point, this thought occurred where said, "Gee, this feels like a life review." Um, And I've always thought to myself that I could never write a book. I thought people that wrote books were absolutely amazing, especially fictional novels.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the thought occurred to me, you could write a book. It
Mm-hmm.
was like I discovered that so much had occurred in this life
Mm-hmm.
while I was having this conversation that nothing's going on, um, or it's not turning out the way I had planned. Um, but it's been very, very profound. And I bought the Greatest Secret, which I resisted buying because The Secret didn't really I got the message, but I felt like there was so much more that
Mm,
wasn't being said in that book that I lost interest in
mm,
it
mm.
kind of quickly. So I'm in the middle of reading that, and I'm enjoying the pointers.
Mm.
Um, so that's kind of what's been going
Yeah,
on.
that's really good. Well, the experiences you mention, they're called RITAM experiences, and it's when there is more depth, because when we have certain experiences, not everything registers in terms of clarity about that experience, but it, on some level, it is being registered in awareness. And so the reason that they're being recalled with more of a depth to them is because where they're being viewed from now is from effortless being or the body of wisdom rather than from the mental body. So it tends to be that the sort of the sort of sensory aspects of the experience can sometimes be activated as well. So, whatever was being seen or heard or smelt or touched the moment can be activated. So in a way, the experiences themselves aren't hugely important. What's really encouraging, though, is that there's the ability to experience from the level of Ritam. So
Okay.
that's really good.
Okay. And the
So,
reason that they disappear, like I
yes,
have absolutely no memory of them once they show up, and
yes, yes. Well,
uh,
in some ways, that's also an aspect of the dissolving or the receding of the personal mode, because sometimes there are experiences we have which register quite deeply in the personal mode. And then because the ability to function from impersonal being is something which is coming to the foreground, then the aspects of personalization can sometimes be dissolved so that they're kind of erased, really, so that they may previously be coloring certain aspects of experience, but then it just becomes much clearer.
okay, okay.
So, yeah, that's really good. So, how do you feel you are in terms of the distinction between impersonal being and the personal mode of experience? Do you feel you're clear on that, Carolyn?
It feels pretty clear, and sometimes because I have a situation, a personal situation that's been going on for many, many years, and it's coming to a head. Um, Sometimes I get caught in
Mm.
that old cycle. So
Yes.
the thought will arise, and I've noticed this for many, many years, but it's becoming clearer and clearer. So it's like when the thought arises and and I feel reactivated, like I'm
Mm.
back in the same old story. I can see that the acceptance of the thought, which seems very subtle, and at the same time like being hit over the head with a hammer. Um,
Mhm.
I I recognize that the whole identity comes back.
Yes.
The entire thing comes back.
Yes.
It's like once I lay the first brick, I have the whole wall.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's immediate.
That's a good way to describe it, actually, because we we each have themes of personalization, and it's the most intense ones which draw us back in most effectively. And they're almost designed to do that. They're designed to create that whole realm of personalization, which includes the mental, emotional, and physical aspects.
Yeah,
And so the way you describe it is, the brick results in the wall
mm,
is a good, that's a good way.
yeah. Well, one
But
thing, go ahead.
sorry, what that really shows, the way you describe it, is that even though there's an invitation for you to identify with that old frequency, that there's some space now where you can see that there's an option to decline the invitation, and you don't, the first brick is presented to you, but you don't necessarily need to go on and build the whole wall.
Yes. And sometimes I just start laying bricks. I catch myself, and I know that that's what's going on. But
Mm.
even the conversation that I know that's going on is part of the same wall.
Yes,
And
yes.
so I wanted to say something about this. And I also would like you to talk about the inversion
Mm.
part that you've mentioned many
Yes.
times. Um, so about 12 years ago or so, I was just sitting at my dining room table. I've been pretty much, I don't know why, I was just sitting there. The thoughts were just arising.
Mm.
I wasn't doing anything at all.
Mm.
Um, and I noticed that pretty much my entire life, I have been on this spiritual path or this inquiry. It was called
Mm.
many things at many different points. But
Yes.
the other thing that was running at the same time on another track was this thing I have going on with men and relationships.
Hmm.
And I was sitting there, and this kind of just came into awareness. And all of a sudden, I saw that this thing with men was just a distraction.
Yes.
I started laughing hysterically.
Great.
Okay. So that made a lot of space and a lot of freedom also in the relationship. Um, and more things have fallen away that I've been hooked in.
Mm.
But that last hook, or at least that's the way it seems to show up,
Mm.
um, is still there. And something happened around Easter time where there was this big explosion on my part, and something broke that I didn't even know was there to
Mm.
that extent. And
Hmm.
when it broke, I felt like I was free again. It felt
Good.
like free again.
Mm.
Okay.
Yes.
And how I started experiencing my life was I felt unfamiliar, like there was no past and no future that was giving rise to this Carolyn.
Mm.
It wasn't uncomfortable. In fact, it was very nice. It was very
Yes.
easy. Um,
Even effortless.
it is completely effortless. um, and uh, I don't think it was circumstantial, but what happened was because my husband works away, he went away, and when he came back, I was kind of back in the old um, story again.
Mm. Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
even knowing that it's not the way it plays out,
Yes.
that this isn't true, it still
Yes.
gets a hold of me.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So I was interested in if you wouldn't mind going more deeply into this thing about the inversion, that the thing presents itself and it's actually the
Yes, sir. Well, in a sense, one could say that relationships, personal relationships, in the biggest sense, the inversion is the inversion between our true nature, which is attributeless being, and the personal realm, or even the physical realm. And so, because there is the potential to function from impersonal being, the dualistic realm tries to keep us preoccupied in either the personal or the physical realm as a distraction, because everything in this world really is designed to make it seem as though the physical realm is primary, and that's because this whole realm is an inversion, really. And when we see that, it becomes easier to disconnect our energy from it, because most of the investments we have are to do with things like personal relationships, physical experiences, sometimes mental and emotional preoccupation. But it's knowing that that is all part of this independent energy system. But for you, the potential to function from your infinite nature and from impersonal being is something which has been there all your life. And on some level, you've known that. And as you say, it's kind of transmuted along the way. But that the essence of what you are has always been there. And there's been a kind of recognition of the potential to be able to realize and to be able to function from there again, rather than for the dualistic realm to predominate.
Yeah, I've never let go, or it's never let go of
Mm,
of, of me one way or the other.
yes.
Yeah, it's been there as long as I can recall.
So do you feel you have the option to rest as effortless, impersonal being, but also at will to be able to activate the personal realm? So that knowing that you're in essence the infinite, impersonal, effortless, omnipotent being, but then when you're called on, you can play the role of Carolyn.
I've had the experience of that.
Mm,
It doesn't seem to me at the moment that that's as clear cut as you're
right.
stating it.
Yes. Well, let's just have a look, because sometimes just being guided quite simply through some exercises can make quite a difference. So um, you've probably seen some of these exercises demonstrated, but just really, if you could just let me know if there are any thoughts arising in this moment.
Yes,
Okay, that's good. Are there any emotions?
yes, there's a kind of excitement or
Good.
yeah.
And do you feel that you can view both the thoughts and emotions from impersonal beings? So seeing that the awareness you are is aware of the thoughts, and the awareness you are is aware of the emotions. So their forms appearing, but actually you're remaining as this open space of awareness and beingness, which is like an ocean or a field, and forms arise within that. So thought forms can appear, or emotional forms, or sensations, and they're just arising equally and effortlessly. So you're just resting effortlessly as this open field, and there isn't anything you need to do. It's like the ocean doesn't really need to do anything for the waves to arise. And so the waves of form appear, and they just merge back into the silence of beingness. And you're just resting as this open space of awareness, and the forms appear. And it's effortless. You don't need, there isn't anything one can do really to turn that off, because it's what you fundamentally are. It's just that a filter of personalization has been added, where it appears as though it's Carolyn who's having these experiences. Carolyn is having the thoughts, Carolyn is having the emotions or the sensations, but um, really it's always effortless, impersonal being which is aware. And then there's the secondary mode, where we can activate the sense of personalization, and usually it's through familiar themes, in the way you describe.
Yeah.
But just as I've mentioned in some of the conversations, just changing the language can make the distinction very clear. So if we just take whatever the thoughts are appearing, so the thoughts could be personalized, and then there could just be effortless impersonal awareness of those thoughts.
Yes, I can.
You
Yeah,
can see it in that
I can
way.
see it. I can see it. And
Fantastic.
it's almost like a sense of expansion, like it opens,
Yes,
and I want to laugh
great.
when that happens. And so that's present now. And there's this little energy over
Mm.
here that keeps sticking its head up and saying, could this really happen? Could this really happen? It's like,
Is it like an invitation into doubt in some way?
yes,
Would you? Yeah.
yes, yeah.
That's quite interesting. But it's good the way you're even seeing that from impersonal being, because um, the the tendency we have is to listen to those words and those voices as though they are our own, when really what you've detected in the way you describe it, it's like this frequency which is being delivered
Mm,
to invite us to identify with it as though they're our thoughts and our experiences. But the way you describe it's really clear, which is that you, the effortless impersonal being, is simply effortlessly aware of that invitation. And the reason that the tendency to laughter is emerging is because when we're identified with the dualistic realm, so when we're identified with the thoughts and the emotions and the physical realm, there's an energetic investment in that way, because we have to be kind of invested energetically to have those experiences, because they're actually contrary to our true nature, because our true nature is effortless. But to maintain personalization, or to maintain the mental, emotional, or physical realm, requires quite a lot of effort. But when you withdraw that effort and you're just resting as effortless being, just this effortless impersonal space, and then those forms or invitations are just being noticed effortlessly, because it's being seen from effortless being, the option is to move towards euphoria and bliss rather than back into the conceptual realm, because the disconnection from the realm, the dualistic realm, has been made. And then you realize there's this option to go in the other direction, which is to expansion, euphoria, bliss, and more heightened experiences. That's
okay.
fantastic.
Yeah, I wanna say what's happening right now. Okay.
Mm,
Um, so I'm listening to you and I can see everything that you're saying, and there was a lot of emotion arising.
mhm,
Some of this feeling of bliss, and
mhm,
and and wanting to cry as well, kind of that
mhm.
overwhelming kind of relief, you know,
Yes.
and the narrative. I
Hmm.
could see the narrative. I could see it. The narrative. It just it keeps coming
Yes.
into the space.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's
So
so
it is.
serious. You know,
Yes.
it takes itself so seriously. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And yeah, it has, you can feel the sort of serious and the sort of heaviness of that frequency, which
Instantly.
is from the dualistic realm, and then the lightness of impersonal being. And as you made that distinction, it's very easy actually, because you realize there's an option, which is that anything which is coming from your infinite nature has a feeling of expansion.
Mm,
Anything coming from the dualistic realm has a feeling of contraction. So it's very easy to identify the source.
yes.
And then you realize you can opt for the expansion rather than the contraction.
What, not to keep pushing for this, but it's the thing that keeps coming up like a stop. So even in the awareness that that's what's occurring, and even because some years ago I caught the physical contraction that would happen when I would just call it I, I was lying. I mean, it was that simple. It's like, okay, you're just lying. Okay,
Well, that's very honest to admit to lying.
yes, you know. So I caught myself one day in this argument in my head with someone, and I'm
Hmm.
driving the car and I'm going on and on and on by myself. And all of a sudden I stopped and said, who are you defending? I mean,
Yes.
who's here? You know,
Yes.
what's going on here? But the thing that I noticed in that moment was the contraction in my body.
Yes.
So it became very useful as a tool.
Brilliant.
And you know, when I noticed the contraction, it was like a little
Yes.
alarm, like, hello,
Yes.
wake up here. Uh,
Yes. Well, that's very good because um, noticing contraction is something which, well, for lots of us, you know, ever since, well, early childhood, really, there's been a sense of contraction, which is identification with the personal mode. And when that emerges around about the age of 2, there it's like an invitation that we accept, which is that we're existing as a human being in time and space, which is in itself a sense of contraction. And that mode prevails, you know, for much of the time. But we can become free of it, and the way you describe it there is really helpful because you see that actually it's optional. That the contraction feels as though it's permanent and that it's inescapable, but actually when we change the context, as you did, where you're kind of it's really when you're viewing the contracted realm, the dualistic realm, from the expanded realm, which is from impersonal being, and the contraction becomes you realize actually that it doesn't really have any power over us. It can only be sustained if we consciously fuel it with our own energy and identification.
yeah. Okay. I have a question.
Hmm.
I have a question. So I worked with this man. I was about 33 at the time, um, and named Arnold Siegel. He was someone who had participated or collaborated with Werner Erhard around the S training, which was the first thing I did that
Yes.
made open. Um, and I was in a really depressed place. It was actually a positive place in the sense that I had completely given up hope. So I
Mm.
was not, I had no more, well, but what about this? What, no, there was
Yes.
nothing. I don't even know how I got in that room, to tell you the truth.
Right.
But a friend, anyway, that's beside the point. So what happened is I went to this event and I went home and I was still as agitated and uh, angry and upset as I was when I went there. But something happened. I had an interaction with this man during the course. And I saw something which I couldn't speak of afterwards, but I saw something that I had never seen before.
Hmm.
Okay. So I went home. In the morning, when I opened my eyes in the room that I had been sleeping in for years,
Mm.
I saw it for the first time. Everything was like new.
Fantastic.
My life was like that daily for about 6 months. And all of the things, I had no more fear about anything in
Mm.
terms of um, the things that you want to do that stop you because you haven't got enough sense of yourself or enough confidence
Yes.
or enough whatever. I did
Yeah.
all of those things that presented themselves. Um, and one day, this guy that I had been very attracted to called me up. And while I was on the phone with him, I actually felt it slip away.
Wow.
I actually felt I didn't know what happened, and I didn't know what happened to bring me there. So it
Right.
felt like an accident. Do you know what
Yes.
I mean? Something that I had no knowledge of. And I've often wondered if I had known or had someone around me who could have pointed out what was actually occurring, if it would have made a difference.
Yes.
And I wondered what you thought about that.
It's very interesting because actually the video paused for, well, the recording or the transmission paused for a moment because um you said that it lasted for six, and I'm
Six
not sure.
months.
6 months. Great. That's good. So really, what had happened is the the course that you had been on actually enabled you to function from impersonal being, because when impersonal being becomes established, the invitations which are present in the dualistic realm no longer have the power to draw us back in. So it was pretty firmly established for 6 months.
Yes.
But um, it's really worthwhile to understand the nature of the koshas and the way we have these various options, because um, we can see actually what's going on, because it was actually quite a simple event that took place there, because really the the establishment in effortless being had been made then, and it's actually been there since then in reality. It's just that there was an invitation which was delivered, which is your primary invitation, which is which is to do with relationships, probably.
Yes.
And, and that was the weapon used against you to draw you back into the personal realm. So the reason that it seemed to disappear is because the ability to maintain functioning from impersonal being prevailed throughout that 6 month period. But then, because of the intensity of the conversation and the nature of this guy who you were attracted to, you were drawn back into the personal realm. So the freedom present in impersonal being appeared to dissolve. It didn't actually. It's just that there was a reversion to the personal mode. But had you known that these two options are available, so there's impersonal being, which is easily available to you, it's been there for years and years, but there are also these invitations into the personal realm. Um, it isn't that the impersonal being can ever be lost. It's just that we can entertain or be invited into the personal realm without realizing what's going on. But without the understanding of the distinction between impersonal being and the personal realm, we feel as though we've lost our realization. But it's not that it's lost, it's just that we've opted for the personal mode instead. But when you know that impersonal being is still there could have just been the conversation, and then just a relaxing back into impersonal being, realizing what had gone on, realizing that it was the inversion, that it's your primary invitation back into the energy game of the dualistic realm. And you would have just been able to continue as normal, because the contraction actually isn't an issue when you know that your fundamental nature is expansion, because the contraction is just something you entertain temporarily. But because of the stories we tend to run about limitation, then the contraction comes in, and then simultaneously there can be the delivery of a few thoughts. Oh, you've lost it now, haven't you, Carolyn? Oh, bad luck. It's that kind of thing.
Right. Bad luck. I went back to the man that I worked with. He had an evening event, and I said to him, I don't understand. I said, how I could know something so clearly.
Mm.
There was no doubt, there was no
Yes.
lack of clarity, there was no nothing. How can I forget that? And I can't get hold of it. And his answer pissed me off royally because he said to me, well, you think you probably need to spend more time around me. I said, no. Okay. Maybe that was true. I don't know. But it didn't go down. It didn't go
No.
down well. But while you were speaking and I was hearing what you were saying, I mean, it's really clear what you're saying. And the first time I heard you say it was really clear. It's the thing that kept me engaged. And it
Yes.
wasn't like I was trying to get it. It was like, this is so simple. It's just so simple,
Yes.
so clear, and I can see that it's just the habit of wanting to go back into the drama. Like
Yes.
that, just you had a conversation. I don't know where he was from. I can't remember his name. Um, anyway, there was some interaction that took place between the two of you. And during the conversation, he was going in and out of this expanded state, like continuously. Like he'd
Mm.
be wide open and then he'd go back into I, and then he'd open up again. And it was really useful
Mm.
to watch the thing happen,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
Um, and I guess you just show favoritism to this character because you've been dancing with him for so long. I don't know. But I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic what you're putting out there. It's just
Well, thank you. It is, as you recognize, it's just the simplicity, and it's just the stories tend to make it appear very complicated and as though we can lose things, when really the essence never goes away. It's always there.
yeah.
And it's only that we're entertaining these more limited realms of experience, but it takes a huge amount of energy, mentally and emotionally and physically sometimes, to maintain them. But
But
the
sometimes
simplicity.
things happen that are so. Uh, 7 years ago, I was in this incredible. Um, I don't even want to say it like a construct because it wasn't. It was just.
Hmm.
It was like whatever motivated action in my life was not
Hmm.
there. The old,
Oh, yes.
right? So it wasn't there. I was in an incredibly clear space.
Hmm.
I didn't even know how I got to the things I had to do, but everything got done. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I get a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's my aunt, and she's calling to tell me that my brother died all
Hmm.
of a sudden. Okay. When when my brother died, now my relationship with my brother for me was like the closest person to me in my life. For me,
Hmm.
he was home. That was
Yes.
my
Yes.
experience of him. Um, and that was 3 o'clock in the morning. By the afternoon of the next day, I was in Boston. That's how fast I got myself out.
Hmm.
Um, and apart from the impact of the experience, and the loss and the pain and all of those things, I had this experience of being thrown back into the world. I even spoke to I have a kind of friend who's been with me since we were
Hmm.
14 years old on this path, so to speak,
Yes.
that I could speak about this. I literally felt like I was thrown in the mud. Like I
Hmm.
was more in the world than I ever had been, if that was
Yes.
possible. That's what it felt like. 5 days later, my mother died. Neither one of them were sick.
Wow.
Okay. My experience or my sense is that my mother died. She couldn't take the loss of my brother. She died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
And I remember at some point having a thought like, wow, what is it you need to wake up
Mm.
if this doesn't do it?
Mm.
Because what happened, and it took me some years to figure it out, what happened was I completely identified with this event,
Mm.
with their deaths,
Mm.
with the way I experienced myself. I felt my life kind of deconstructing, like all
Mm.
of the things that made me who I was somehow were falling apart. There was no more foundation. The memories that I was having of childhood, everything was just.
Mm.
But it was a couple of years later. I was working with this woman, Katerina Shakti Katerina Maggi. You may have heard of her. And we did an exercise, and I completely, that thing that was in my body completely disappeared.
Mm.
And a few days later, I recognized what had happened, that I had identified myself
Yes.
as this event.
Yes.
In the beginning, when people spoke to me about anything that wasn't that, my thought would be, why are they saying this to me? Don't they know what happened?
Mm.
It
Mm.
was very, very powerful. And
Mm. Mm.
it seems kind of sacrilegious to say that that was an invitation, but
Yeah, well, it's the way that you see that actually is, is really clear because those kind of experiences, they function on two levels, as I'm sure you know. The one is they are an invitation. They're an invitation um, in the most extreme way into the personal realm, because everything about the personal identity is hinged around key characters in one's life, of the closest family members. But within those experiences, there is the potential for complete freedom also, because it's possible to experience them from impersonal being rather than from the personal mode. So you were invited into the deepest form of personalization, and it was probably quite energetically depleting when you were maintaining that.
oh yeah.
But then, gradually, you see it as more of a storyline within the personal realm, and then it can be viewed from impersonal being. And when it is, then not only are you free energetically from those experiences, but also they're seen in a much deeper context. So everything of value, in terms of the love, the compatibility, all the wonderful experiences you had with your family members, all of that is retained and appreciated. Not that you're dwelling on it really, but it's, whenever it's brought to attention, there is that feeling of fullness really. But the aspects which are inviting you into mental and emotional turmoil can dissolve, so that you don't need to entertain those experiences in relation to the relationships you've had with your closest family members. And that's the healthiest way, really, because you see ultimately that everyone and everything is the infinite impersonal being. And we only have this little play of personalization so we can have the depth and poignancy of personal relationships, of the gain and the loss, and the experiences in the human realm. But actually the ability to perceive and experience them from impersonal being is retained throughout, because you realize, well, actually you remained as the impersonal being, your brother remained as the impersonal being, your mum remained as the impersonal being. Fundamentally, there is no loss. In the same way as the actors step on the stage, so the infinite being steps on the stage animates these characters, and it seems as though there's a huge drama going on. But then the actor goes home, or the infinite impersonal being remains as the infinite impersonal being, and you realize the personal mode was just a little play, really.
Yeah,
But it's
I'm sorry.
very compelling, though.
Yeah, it was very compelling because you don't realize that you've constructed this identity.
Yes,
And so when it starts to deconstruct, it's very destabilizing.
yes.
Yeah. But it's funny how this stuff kind of just drops in without any prior thought or warning or anything. I was going onto my balcony one day. I was just stepping, I wasn't thinking about anything. I was going out to hang clothes, and all of a sudden it was like this um, knowledge occurred to me, a thought occurred to me, or a thought occurred.
Mm.
He didn't go anywhere. He was never
No,
here.
no.
It was so clear.
Yes,
He didn't go anywhere. He was never here. That was it. There was nothing else. There was no thoughts after. There was no thoughts
fantastic.
before. It was
Yes.
just this awareness. But
So simple, really. Yeah, it is. Well, that's just the sense of beingness in this moment, the sense of existence, which is right here and now, the presence, which is the only thing we're knowing, really. We're just knowing that sense of presence, existence, awareness, and then forms arising within that. But you realize everybody remains simply as that presence, awareness, and existence. And then these forms, they appear and then they dissolve. But we all remain as that. That's all we can ever be. That's all everyone and everything ever is. So it's yeah, lovely the way you saw it, though.
yeah, well, I was really fortunate in that period of time too. I worked with Jac O'Keefe. I don't know if you know who she is, for about 7 years until she
Oh yes,
recently
yes.
stopped teaching. Um, and she was very present during that period of time, particularly the first couple of weeks, a couple of days, a couple of months, etc. And she had said to me when it occurred, she said, the both of us know that in reality, nothing actually happened. But
Mm.
in the human realm, you've been
Yes,
hit by a Mack truck.
yes,
It's like this. And then all of the beliefs that one has around those things, coming from an Italian American background, we have a thing about loyalty. Stuff is just kind of pounded into you. You have no idea. And it felt like if I let go of the pain, it meant I was letting go of the love.
yes. That's the distortion, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is because there's a kind of relative security which some people can temporarily achieve, which is in the personal realm, where it seems as though we're having happy experiences, our family remains intact, and everything seems quite stable. And but that's a fake kind of stability, because it's in the ever-changing realm. But the only the only true stability is within our infinite nature, because you know that that is just completely unchanging. And when we recognize that, we realize that, well, it's great the way you clearly describe it as the kind of structures, because there are structures which were constructed around family and relationships, for the intensity of those experiences. Um, but it's a real relief to recognize that when we understand the various realms of experience, so the realm of bliss or effortless being, or the mental realm, or the emotional, or the physical, that we can experience everything in the way we wish to. So we can be selective in the nature of the experience. So as you were saying, the conditioning we have in the personal realm is it's the idea that grief in some way is actually supporting the reality of the dualistic relationship. But actually, when we when we just rest as the infinite being and we just see the forms changing there, it's just like a little light show, really, which doesn't affect anything, which is permanent. And but 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 seeing that it's optional and seeing that we can have these experiences on our own terms, because everyone really is the sovereign, infinite, impersonal being. So we can have the full-on intensity in the personal realm if we wish to, or we can experience it in a way where it's lighter, and we can select all the amazing aspects, so the love, the commitment, all of the fun and the humor and everything, but not not to be activating the lower frequency emotions around any of those topics.
Yeah. Well, I have a very deep trust in what's running, not
Yes,
in the personal realm.
yes,
And I'm fortunate that I have a lot of evidence for it.
to support it, yeah,
As lots of, stuff that simply falls away, or as you spoke to many of the people about the things that come to you, that you're
mm,
drawn to what resonates,
yes,
and
yes,
and that's been this last year has been like that. And it's
yes,
been, when it started to occur, I didn't notice it immediately, but what would happen is that some invitation from someone would
mm,
come to me
mm,
regarding kind of who, I've always kind of experienced myself to be in
mm,
this world. Uh,
mm-hmm,
so there would be a request for this to be given, and
yes,
instead of that voice that said, "You can't do this. Who the hell are you?" You know, that it,
yes,
it would say it.
that limiting voice,
The voice would come, and it would be like, almost like I'd get slammed in the chest for a minute, and then I'd say,
yes,
"Yeah, no, yes." Whatever the invitation was, I would say, "Yes." And out of that, other invitations have come,
mhm,
not the invitations of the mind, but the
yes,
invitations of,
the infinite being,
it's like, this is what you're here for,
yes,
you know,
definitely.
and that you've
Well,
always, yeah,
that's the summary, really, which you've probably noticed that, the similarity you have with many people I've had conversations with, because that's true of virtually all of them, which is the knowing of the alignment with one's infinite nature from birth. It's always been there, and it's something you can never overlook. And 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 the way you've had lots of experiences of functioning from effortless being for a very long time now, it's inevitable, really, that things will be coming to you when you sense that they're just coming with no doing. And the liberation of that, really, is that there's a feeling of openness, because you can only just be open to what's coming to you. And even if there are invitations which are saying, "Oh, well, who do you think you are, Carolyn?" Limiting beliefs or experiences trying to keep us into, keeping us invested in the dualistic realm. But it's the simplicity of that openness of one's infinite nature into which anything can be delivered. And then you realize that there's alignment with one's infinite nature then, and being in service to one's infinite nature is exactly as you describe. It's what you actually came here for.
yeah, yeah,
And not doubting that, because lots of the aspects, everyone's experience, develops uniquely. And the teachers you've had the benefit of spending time with, and the sequence is something which has created a sort of personal way to assist others, really, but based on everything you've learned along the way. So that, yeah, that's interesting. But there should certainly be no doubt about realization. You can just see very easily that there is always the resting as the infinite impersonal being. It's just that the personal mode is still available, and you can, you just recognize that. And if it's something which you wish to just participate in, then you can do that. But otherwise, you can just return to impersonal being and not energize the personal realm.
Yeah.
But it's knowing that the one's infinite impersonal nature is always there. It's just a question of whether you're functioning from there or whether you activate the personal mode. But because impersonal being is a permanent resource, then it's easy to see that the personal mode is just a little option we have. But the way the personal realm tries to present it is that the personal realm is predominating, and then we lose the impersonal and we don't know how to get it back. But it's because the personal realm is playing a little trick on us to try to keep us engaged.
Well, its conversation's pretty consistent. It's always about law. It's no matter what it looks like it's offering, it's always about loss,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah, exactly.
some threat
Mm. Mm.
that you need to protect yourself from. This
Yes.
is someone that isn't real. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah,
That's wonderful.
yeah. No, God, this is beautiful. It's wonderful to be able to be with you like this.
Thank you. And with you too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. That man, Matthias, that you spoke to,
Yes.
that
Quite recently, yes.
what a beautiful being. Um, I remember him saying, the difference in the feeling of communicating one-on-one,
Mm.
as opposed to the videos. And I actually remember the first time I ever had an experience of that. And I said to myself, was many years ago with a video of Adyashanti, where I experienced listening, but not with my mind.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? I didn't even know what I meant, except it
Yes.
it was there,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's definitely present now,
Mm.
as well. Yeah,
Good.
yeah, great.
Well, it's the simplicity of unity consciousness, really. There is just the one being, and we're just experiencing that directly, that single field.
Yeah. Now well, I know that the kind of things that we see through allow us to kind of go more deeply into things. And I know this happened for you 20 years ago. Is that right? 20 years ago?
Yes.
That conversation with you were listening to John Wheeler.
Mm.
Um, Sometimes when I listen to you, at some point I wonder, how does he know that? Where is that? Where did that come from?
Mm.
You think you could speak about that a little bit? Not the not the bottom line, but the things
Mm.
that arise in the moment. Because my experience when I work with people, because I work with people,
Yes.
not even the right word for it, but um, everything arises in the moment, and I know
Yes.
that it's not coming from Carolyn, and
Yes.
I'm just the vehicle,
Mm.
because I could be, which has happened to me, in the middle of a crisis, and then I have to get on the call and everything just
Mm.
disappears. Um,
Yes.
so, um, but sometimes when you're speaking, like when you speak about the koshas, is it just the exposure to it, or the studying, or your sense of, is it that field of wisdom? Is it that?
It's really it's been quite simple really, which is that very early on it became apparent that the mind wasn't really an effective device to be utilizing in terms of realization, or to, in terms of helping others really. So effortless being and things coming to oneself without any trying became very apparent, as being the most effective way. So really, since, well, in the past 20 years, I haven't really looked at any other teachers. I haven't read any books, because in some way, to whatever degree we're looking outside, we're compromising the ability to allow our infinite nature just to come through in a way which is unimpeded. And I was very lucky in one way to recognize that very early on. And so everything has come in a kind of sequence, in a sort of effortless sequence, where there hasn't been any intention. It's just that certain things come along with certain stages. So I was familiar with the concept of the koshas a long time ago when I was involved in meditation. But the clarity in seeing the way they function, and seeing that they're normally being presented in an inverted way, all of that became quite apparent. So it's a combination of um, direct experience, really. So it's quite easy when there's familiarity with impersonal being um, and the body of bliss. You can see the way the sequence unfolds, because you can see that they're going from, well, attributelessness, really, attributeless being, firstly, and then to bliss, which is the most subtle, and then into effortless being, and then seeing the dualistic realm as being independent. But whatever's required has just come along. But lots of it actually has come as a result of conversations with people, because there are certain questions, and the answer just seems to appear. Really, it isn't. It isn't through studying, or um, or through conceptualizing. Really, it's just that it's like whatever's required just comes forward somehow.
Yeah, no, I get that. I just wondered if that was the way that it was.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
It's fascinating, really, because the it's a sequence which is ongoing. That's the thing that's really inspiring, because you realize that it never ends, and it also there's always more that can develop, and it can move on to higher levels of knowledge, higher levels of integration, higher levels of bliss. And yeah, fascinating to see the way it's guided, really.
yeah,
And also the way infinite being is making itself available much more widely. So self-realization is available, very easily to anyone really who's looking for it.
yeah. Beautiful, beautiful.
But it's fascinating in a way, um because there's definitely a consistency in the sort of essence of virtually everyone I speak with, which is that there is there is already full alignment with the infinite impersonal being. And that's, sometimes people can have turbulent lifetimes, or life experiences, but the alignment with their infinite nature was there from day one, really, or before day one. And it can never be overlooked. It can never be sidelined somehow.
Mm, yeah.
But the most consistent thing really is that everyone really is completely underestimating their potential, because all the conditioning in this world has been to do with personalization and authorship, when really our impersonal nature is, it's just really infinite potential. So when we relinquish the personal mode, then anything can just come forward, really. And yeah, it's fascinating to see where the way that the way it happens. The most profound experiences and events happen completely effortlessly, which is totally in opposition to the way we've been conditioned.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm thinking about the teacher's manual and the Course in Miracles, and how it says those that are meant to find you will find you.
Yes,
You know,
yes, exactly.
yeah,
Mm.
you know, because part of this thing that's been occurring in this past year, all of it has been like that. And
Mm.
what's starting to happen is more people are starting to arrive. And I have
Fantastic.
this consideration, and then I let go of it because I'm really, and it's kind of amazing. I have no investment in how it turns out.
No,
You
it's
know,
paradoxical in a way, isn't it?
yeah,
Because when there's no investment, if the inquiries stop, you wouldn't do anything to initiate anything, would you?
yeah, yeah. But one of the questions that was asked to me about making a referral
Mm.
was, do you need the person to be in a particular place? And I said, it's not that I need the person to be in a particular place, but I don't know if I could start in kindergarten.
Yes,
You know what I mean? If there's not
yes.
much mind there, because you're not convincing someone of something, you're
No,
in a soup with them.
exactly.
Oh, so it's kind of, yeah, yeah,
Well, the blessing probably for you and I is that the infinite being only brings those forward who are actually ready to be able to benefit. And so it's completely effortless. And there aren't really any wasted conversations. Every conversation has validity. Sometimes the flavor is slightly different, but they all have great value. And it's a two-way flow, really. Well, it's only the one being, but there can be benefit, in every aspect, really.
yeah,
Yeah, such a fascinating way to be able to experience, and but there has to be that level of experiencing it already, and it's made it much easier having my YouTube channel, because most people I have a conversation with, um, they've watched some of the videos, so they're all already way down the line.
yeah,
So the one thing I mentioned to my assistant is that if there are requests from people who say, "Oh, I've only recently come across your channel," um, she tends to say, "Well, it would probably be beneficial to watch one or two more before you have a conversation," because there isn't really any benefit in having conversations with people where they're in the early stages.
yeah,
Well, there's much more benefit when they're a bit more ripe in a way.
yeah, because there's not a lot of space. Otherwise, yeah, yeah. For some reason, I have the desire to recount this episode to you, so I'm going to do that if that's all right.
Certainly, yeah, certainly.
So, when I was very involved in the EST organization years ago, they
Mhm.
had a communication workshop, which was absolutely amazing. And there was the last exercise of the day, and you were sitting across from another person, And the exercise instruction was you needed to be for that person, whoever they needed to communicate to that they couldn't communicate to, and vice
Mm.
versa. So you kind of
Yes.
took turns.
Mm.
And from the moment the exercise started, so the other person went first, what started to happen was this experience of I could have said her words simultaneously with her.
Ah,
Okay. So that,
yes.
and I could feel this kind of energy flow.
Mm.
Okay. It was just there. And and her emotions, when they arose, the emotions arose in me, not from what she was saying, but it was there.
Simultaneous.
Yes, it was simultaneous. So this went on through her whole um, interaction.
Mm.
um, she was communicating to her husband who had died. She was 36 years old. She had 2 kids. She was pissed off that he was gone, that he left her.
Mm.
Okay. So then it was my turn. And she was my father for me. And we went through the whole thing. And the same thing, I don't know what her experience was because we never spoke about it. But
Mm.
my guess would be that it was
The same.
still going on. Okay. And just before the very end, I had the thought, after you've said everything there is to say, the only thing that's left to say is, I love you.
Mm.
When I had the thought, everything disappeared. The room, my body, there was nothing but white, just white. And the most overwhelming experience of love. I have absolutely no words for it that would do it any kind of justice at all. And I felt that I was more who I was. And
Yes.
I don't know how long it lasted. I don't know if it was a second, 30 seconds, I have no idea.
Mm.
But I felt that I was more who I was in that moment than I had
Yes.
ever been.
Mm.
And the interesting thing was that when the manifestation returned, I had no desire to share it. I had no desire to say anything about it. There were no words. I never forgot it, obviously.
Yes.
Um, and when I listen to people talk about near-death experiences and they talk about that experience of love and the light and
Mm.
all of that,
Mm.
it feels to me
You know exactly what they're.
that I know exactly what that is.
Mm.
Yeah. And on some level,
Fantastic.
I know that even though I don't know the rest of it. And this is something also that Jac O'Keefe talked about because she said she's experienced, I don't know, like 270 something different realms. She said, and then after a while, she said, it doesn't matter because they're all the same. None of them are real. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? So it's kind of like,
Mm.
it's like that. It's like that kind of recognition, even that you don't want to silver box anything, you know?
No,
Yeah.
it's a big theme park.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a lovely story. The simplicity too is it's it's a great summary really of the experience because all of the diversity and the um the contrast we experience, and then it just comes down to that simplicity that you describe.
Yeah.
Mm.
Mm,
Wonderful.
yeah. Thank you, David.